Hi everybody, I'm Sinead Curran. I'm a chartered physiotherapist. For those of you who don't know me, I work at Pilates Physiotherapy Cork in County Cork. And today I'm having a chat with Aoife MacDonald. Aoife's a registered dietitian and she owns the Digestive Health Clinic. Aoife also works at Pilates Physiotherapy Cork and is a brilliant resource to have for all things nutrition. So Aoife, hello, how are you?
I'm great. It's lovely to see you on the screen at least.
Like I was getting sick of seeing people on screens, but
I know.
That's our reality.
We'll be nervous seeing people in person when it happens. You'll be like, oh my God.
It'll be years before we give anyone a hug or a handshake.
Yeah, I know.
Anyway, it is what it is. So Aoife, what I wanted to talk to you about is successful aging, healthy aging. That's my special area of interest. And we know from decades of research at this stage that physical activity and nutrition are two of the cornerstones of building resilience as people get older and into older age. I'm fairly happy with my background in physical activity, and I know that with physical activity as people get older, the recommendations don't change massively from younger adults, but the emphasis does change. And I'm assuming that with nutrition, as people's bodies change with age, that nutrition possibly changes in terms of recommendations, or does it?
Yeah, great question. So kind of similar with the physical activity, with that changing in older adults, there are some kind of changes with nutrition as well, like nothing very extreme or anything like that, but there are some little changes that maybe a lot of people aren't aware of.
Okay.
So the main thing, I suppose, when it comes to kind of physical activity and kind of muscle strength and things like that, is that we know in older adults, actually their protein needs increase with age, which does surprise a lot of people. Yeah, particularly if they're quite active, it's going to be really important that they're getting enough protein in their diet. And alongside that, we do tend to see a slight decline in their energy needs. And that can be because of kind of with that loss of muscle mass over time, their basal metabolic rate, or the kind of calories they use just for the body to keep going, that can decrease. So we see a slight reduction in their energy, but an increase in protein. So from that point of view, we don't want to see, a massive increase in energy intake, because that might see an increase in weight, but we do need to increase the protein. So focusing on high quality, good quality proteins will be really important in the aging adult. So that's something to consider. Have you seen that much in your kind of clients and things?
I would definitely see muscle
protein.
I would actually not. I don't think people are generally, this is completely anecdotal, I don't think people are generally all that aware of the need to increase the protein intake. I think people probably recognize the need to decrease their calorie intake or their energy intake because they're putting weight on. But then what I find, and again, purely anecdotal, what I find with people is then they diet. So they're telling me, I'm asking them about if they have a normal healthy diet, and they'll say, well, yes, but I'm doing Slimming World, or I'm doing some other particular type of diet because I've gained weight. Or else the other end of the spectrum, probably older adults again, their bodies are actually getting smaller, so they think they're losing weight, but it's probably muscle mass they're losing and not fat, and then they're trying to eat more fat to gain weight. So I think this kind of confusion, people aren't aware, and even as a physiotherapist, I wasn't all that aware of how the dietary intake should accommodate the process of aging, and that's why I really wanted to talk to you about it.
Yeah. So protein will be important. Like, for example, for an adult, so a younger adult, the recommendation is 0.8 grams of protein for every kilogram of their weight. So that's for kind of quite sedentary. So not like, obviously an athlete would have quite a higher protein requirement. But then for the older adults, that kind of protein requirement increases up to 1 to 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram. So it's quite a bit more than even a younger adult. So I think if people are aware of that, they can focus more on including high quality proteins in their diet, and then potentially alongside exercise may actually reduce the loss of muscle mass as they age. It will have a lot of benefits, of course.
And what would that look like? This is putting me on the spot now doing maths. For somebody who say a 60 kg woman, what would that amount of protein look like over the course of a day? Would it all be at dinner? Would you recommend it spread out during the day? Is it a lot of protein? Is it just an extra small piece of chicken? Or how does it look?
Yeah, so basically what I always say to people is that with protein, so obviously your muscles are live tissues, as with your bones, they're live tissues. So they need to have kind of a constant supply of the nutrients they need to rebuild or replenish themselves. So when it comes to protein, instead of kind of having it all in the evening meal, which a lot of people do, they have their meat or something in the evening, they're getting plenty of protein. But where they're missing out on the protein is that kind of their early meals in the day and also their snacks and things. And that's normally where people are missing out, and they could do with a bit of kind of dietary manipulation to get that extra protein in at their other meals. And we know as well with protein, like if your body can only kind of utilize and kind of absorb a certain amount of protein at a time. So if you're having like a really, really large amount of protein at dinner time, you're probably not going to be absorbing all that protein. So any excess protein, you'll basically just weed out. So that's why it's important that at every meal you're including a good source of protein and your snacks as well. And we know of all the macronutrients, so macronutrients is going to be your carbohydrates, your protein and your fat. That protein is a macronutrient that keeps you feeling fuller for longer. So if you're lacking protein, you may be more likely to overeat because you're not really getting that satiating effect from the protein. So in terms of your meals, many people might have, a scone or something, or some toast, just some plain toast with butter. There's not really going to be much protein in that. So it's looking at adding some protein into that meal, whether it be things like egg or yogurt or nuts or even seeds are a good source of protein as well. Same at lunchtime, aiming to get a good source of protein in there, whether it's, a tin of tuna, even things like legumes, which maybe a lot of older adults aren't that familiar with. So things like chickpeas and lentils and beans, they're all great sources of protein as well, so including them. Also dairy products, so they have the added benefit of having lots of calcium in them as well. So generally for older adults, we'd say to include kind of 2 to 3 portions of dairy every day. And that's kind of from a calcium point of view, but as well, they're nutritious in terms of their protein content. So if you're going to be having, something like a yogurt or a glass of milk or some cheese as one of your snacks in the day, then that will ensure you're getting, a good source of protein in there as well. And then in the evenings, people are pretty good for getting in their protein. So continuing with their meat or their fish or kind of vegetarian sources of protein at their evening meal, and kind of doing that and making sure, if someone's looking at their meal, they're not really sure if they're having much protein, just thinking about their meals individually and thinking, am I actually having any protein in that meal, particularly at breakfast, is where people tend to miss out. So looking at it that way is kind of the easiest way.
And you are giving people permission to snack, even if we're trying to decrease energy intake.
Yeah, people often ask about snacks, but what we say, like, as I said, with the protein, it's good to combine like a carbohydrate and a protein with your snacks. So you're going to get the carbohydrate, which is going to give you that kind of energy that you need in terms of kind of the glucose from the carbohydrate when your body breaks it down, and then the protein is going to give you that satiating effect where you're feeling full. So having snacks that combine a bit of carbohydrate and a bit of protein are probably the best things to keep you feeling full.
Okay, so really then, are you potentially having protein 4 to 5 times a day rather than just that one evening meal? You're trying to get it in 4 to 5 times a day, essentially. Okay, that's really good to know.
Yeah.
That's really good to know. And you mentioned a whole variety of different types of foods there, including vegetarian protein options. Is there a reliable website that people could go to if they want to get more information about what foods contain decent protein levels? Would the Irish Nutrition and Dietetics Institute, with their website, have that information?
Yeah, they generally, I can link you some stuff after, but generally, the INDI would have it, or there's the British Dietetic Association. They have good kind of fact sheets as well. Or the British Nutrition Foundation have really good fact sheets just about different kind of nutrients and stuff. So I can link them to you after in case any of your clients might be interested in having a look at it.
Perfect. And you mentioned there as well, a thing that I find quite a lot because I have a particular interest in bone health. Some of my poker face moments come about when people tell me that they're not tolerating dairy, and as they've got older they've found that they're more lactose intolerant, they're more intolerant to dairy foods. They may be self-diagnosed, they may have been diagnosed by a dietitian, they may have been diagnosed by their GP, but they're cutting, I find this quite a lot, they're cutting dairy completely out of their diets, and not replacing the calcium, and now we know also the protein as well, with something, with a kind of, I suppose, a guided way of replacing what it is, that big food group that they're leaving out. And from what you're saying, dairy is kind of a multifunctional food source. So if you are leaving it out, you do have to be quite careful, don't you?
Yeah, I would say, like, if you are cutting out a certain food group for whatever reason from your diet, that it's really important that you are substituting with it in terms of the nutrient content. So, like, if for whatever reason, if you don't have a dairy, you need to look at dairy alternatives. So there's plenty actually available in the shops now, whether it be kind of soya in terms of milk, or, you know, you can get lactose-free milk or different nut milks and stuff like that. But the only thing with most of those alternatives is particularly things like almond milk or nut milks, is that they have virtually no protein in them, because they are like 99% water. So there's actually not much protein in them. So relying on them from a protein point of view isn't going to be, you know, a good option. In terms of kind of the best option for plant milks, we know that soya milk is the one that is highest in protein. So if you are going for alternatives, maybe soya milk would be a good one to have, and you can get soya yogurt and stuff as well. Okay. And then the other thing to remember is that for the milks, that if they're organic, they can't be fortified with vitamins and minerals. So if you're getting organic soya milk or organic oat milk or whatever, it's not going to be fortified. So just to keep that in mind, it's not going to be any calcium or vitamin D or iodine or anything in there.
Okay. Would you recommend, not that getting older shouldn't be medicalized or shouldn't be considered a condition, because it's actually a great thing to happen, and it's a privilege, but would you recommend that anybody who is leaving out a food group because it's upsetting their tummy or because it's changing their skin, or people who are changing their diet as they get older, should they see a dietitian, a clinical dietitian, or is it something that people can navigate themselves and don't really need any professional help with? Is it a bit too important to leave it to chance or to hope that you get it right?
Yeah, I mean, it probably isn't a bad idea to get information. Like, of course, there's lots of information available, advice, and seeing someone one-to-one would be beneficial. And then as well, like, sorry, my internet connection went there.
It's okay. I think you're back again.
Okay.
Yeah.
I forgot what I'm saying now. Can you edit this bit out? I've literally lost track of what I'm saying now.
Don't rely on my editing skills. So we were talking about whether or not somebody who's changing their diet or deciding to leave out food groups for whatever reason, should they get some professional dietitian guidance before embarking down that path, or is it something that people can generally navigate themselves? It sounds like it's something that should require thought and planning.
Yeah, definitely require planning, particularly, like you said, if people are finding that certain foods maybe aren't suiting them anymore, then definitely maybe seeing someone for one-to-one advice to make sure that your diet is nutritionally adequate. You're not kind of going blinding into cutting out food groups and then realizing, you know, a few years' time that you've been lacking this particular nutrient, which may increase your risk of disease or kind of bone issues and things like that. And as well, like, if you have any particular comorbidities, you know, if you're, you know, pre-diabetic or you have diabetes or high cholesterol, we know that rates of diabetes and heart disease, obviously the risk of that increases as you age. So you may be worth getting advice on that. If you're looking to kind of optimize your current diet, then it wouldn't be probably a bad idea.
Yeah, that sounds like good advice. One last potentially controversial question. What would your advice be on supplements, on vitamin supplements, mineral supplements, on spending, a lot of people spend quite a lot of money on them. Is it worth it if you have a normal healthy diet? Do you need them as you get older? Do you need that extra little boost? Or again, is it something you should probably get guidance on if you're heading down that route?
Yeah, like in general, it's not recommended that people need to take any supplements, you know, year round. It should be that you're able to get all the nutrients you need from your diet. The one exception would be vitamin D. So that's when we get from the sun and things like that. And we know that in the winter months in Ireland, your skin, you know, can't make vitamin D from the sun. So it is recommended during the winter months that we supplement with vitamin D, 10 micrograms or 400 international units per day to meet your needs for vitamin D. So that would be really, really important. And we know as well in terms of bone health that if you are eating loads of calcium but you're deficient in vitamin D, that actually your body can't absorb the calcium and, you know, put it into the bones properly. So it's really important in terms of bone health to actually have, you know, vitamin D in your diet. There aren't many sources of vitamin D in your diet. The only things are really kind of fish and eggs and things, but they're not very high, so they're not really reliable kind of in the winter months to meet that. So that's really the only one, but generally, like, your diet should provide everything that you need unless you have any specific deficiencies like B12 or iron or something if your GP saw that. And then I suppose the last thing to kind of leave people with is kind of about kind of dietary patterns. So because like, nutrition is a science, and what they've used to do previously was, you know, try to identify what's the cause of, you know, rickets or something, or certain vitamin deficiency. And they found, oh, it's easy, just give them this vitamin and then they won't get it anymore. But kind of nutrition science has evolved a lot since then. So more of the focus now is actually on dietary patterns. So we're not really focusing in on one food or one nutrient, but it's actually your whole diet that is what is important. And what we know from kind of years and years of kind of research in large populations is that kind of a Mediterranean style diet has the best evidence for kind of everything really in terms of heart health and reducing risk of like cognitive decline or progression to dementia and things like that. And there's actually an interesting study done not too recently, but a few years ago, called the PREDIMED Study. And what it did was it was actually specifically in older adults. So it recruited about, I think, 7.5 adults between the ages of 55 and 80. And what they did was split them into 3 different groups. So they had a group.
Was it?
7,500.
Okay, yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So they split them into 3 groups. So group 1 was to follow like a low-fat diet. The second group was following a Mediterranean diet with the addition of 50 grams of olive oil. And then the third group was following a Mediterranean diet with the addition of 30 grams of nuts every day. And they're kind of doing this study to see would it have an effect on kind of the risk of cardiac events in the years following. And what they actually found was that after 5 years, they actually had to stop the study because the benefit of the Mediterranean diet was so significant that it was unethical to continue it. So what they found that is in the low-fat group, that there was a 30% higher incidence of heart attacks in that group over the 5-year period compared to those in either of the Mediterranean style groups. And also in the Mediterranean group, they had lower kind of risk of diabetes, progression of dementia, all those kind of things. So we know that kind of dietary pattern is very, very good. So it's kind of based on having the healthy types of fats. So things like from your fish, your olive oil, your nuts, your seeds, things like avocados. So if people are kind of looking for a benefit, then this is probably the best kind of one to go for in general, because people often are kind of afraid of fat and things. So years ago it was like everyone on low fat, cutting out fat from everything. But we know that all fat isn't the same, just as all carbohydrates aren't the same. It's the quality of them that's important. So focusing on including kind of more healthy fats, so fish and things like nuts and seeds as well. Like a lot of people in Ireland don't eat fish. So that may be something people may need to supplement with actually is omega-3s if they don't eat fish like on a weekly basis, like oily fish, salmon, mackerel, sardines, that kind of thing.
Okay, so just omega-3s and then vitamin D and anything prescribed by your doctor is basically once you have a healthy diet is all you need to be taking. That's brilliant.